Hello there. I just want to offer a quick, heartfelt thanks to everyone who has left a 5-star rating and personal review for True Tales from Old Houses. I read every one of them, and I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to offer that feedback. Your ratings and reviews help potential new subscribers know that True Tales from Old Houses is worth a listen, and sharing each episode with a screenshot or a link helps people find the show. So please keep those shares, 5-star ratings, and personal reviews coming. Let's blow up the internet and get more people involved in old house life and invested in preserving their built environment. Thank you. In today's episode, Alex joins me for listener Q&A. We talk about ways to choose and modify low-end cabinetry to make it look more suitable for an old house. And then later, I chat with longtime restoration contractor Stephen Ortado about 4-leaf clovers and his most memorable encounters with spirits. But first, I'm Stacy Grinsfelder from Blake Hill House, and you're listening to True Tales from Old Houses. Hello and welcome back. It is spooky season. I keep getting feedback that these October ghost stories are some of your favorite episodes. They certainly are fun to record, and in the 4 years that I've been doing this podcast, I have gone from, I would say, full-blown skeptic to someone who believes that there might be something to all of this after all. I can't say I'm a complete believer, but I am open to the idea. Now, before we get into it, I want to offer a quick thanks to our Season 8 supporters, Sutherland Wells, Preservan, and The Window Course. All of my sponsors are hand-picked to be relevant to you, so please do take a look at what they offer and enjoy the coupon codes too. Those codes are always right in the show notes. Okay, I'm going to make the announcements quick because I know that you are excited to hear from Alex and Stephen. The next episode comes out Monday, October 24th, and it's a compilation of ghost stories from various people, including one from me, because over the past year, a few things have happened here in Blake Hill House. Because that episode runs long, there's not going to be a Q&A segment, but you're still welcome to submit your old house or DIY questions through the contact form on the True Tales from Old Houses website. Now, that form is open anytime, in season, off season. Whenever you have a question, just go ahead and submit it because sometimes it does take me a little bit of time to find the right person to join me for Q&A. Now, a few reminders. There is still time to enter the giveaway for the signed copy of Restoring Your Historic House, a comprehensive guide for homeowners written by Scott Hansen. He was my guest last episode, and you can go to truetalesfromoldhouses.com/giveaway to enter from now through Friday, October 14th. And I spoke a little too soon last time because there are still some tickets to the live event at Susan and Will Brinson's house in the Hudson Valley on November 12th. So feel free to grab those before they're gone. I'm also waiting to hear back about some info for the informal Boston meetup to see the Christmas tree in Boston Common. That's going to be in early December. And then, of course, there's still room on the tour to Montreal, Quebec City, and the Canadian Maritimes that I'm hosting next August 10th through 20th. I'll put links to the Hudson Valley tickets and the tour info in the show notes, and I'll update everyone about the Boston meetup in the newsletter and on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to subscribe to the newsletter, go to truetalesfromoldhouses.com/newsletter. I'm trying to make it really easy for everyone to find things on the website. So I'm giving certain things like the giveaway and the newsletter their own landing pages. And finally, if you're interested in what's going on with my guest bath remodel or anything else in Blake Hill House, it's all on the blog at blakehillhouse.com. See, I got through that really quickly. Listener Q&A is up next. For today's listener Q&A, I am so pleased to welcome back Alex from Old Town Home. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm very excited to be back for another season.
Yeah, what's been happening at your house?
We've been undertaking one of the more difficult projects that we have ever done in our house, and we're right in the middle of it at this point. And it is replacing the entire 100-foot long dock at our waterfront. And it's been a arduous task, to say the least. I'm more exhausted right now than I have ever been after a home project. And to put it in perspective, the total delivered lumber weight was about 13,000 pounds, and we are having to hand carry it all from where it was delivered out to the dock. So by the time we're all done, we will have carried 13,000 pounds down and probably 10,000 pounds up of waste.
Oh my gosh. I can understand why you're exhausted. That is a huge project.
It is a little bit bigger than I thought it was. You tend to minimize things in your head when you're trying to plan stuff out. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll just redo the framing, redo the decking, move on to the next. I've gotten to a point where there's a great process and how I'm working through, and it's basically one section at a time in 13 sections, but everything takes 3 to 4 times longer than I thought it was going to take when I was conceptualizing the project.
Sure. Well, you were thinking board by board, and turns out those are heavy boards.
Yes.
Well, I have actually been following some of your progress on Instagram, and everybody else can do that too, because it is a very interesting, you're doing it in a way where you're disassembling parts and then reassembling so you have something to stand on, because eventually you're going to be in the water and you're going to need a place to stand while you work there.
Exactly. We've got this whole process down where essentially we're working on disassembly 3 sections ahead from where we are reassembling. So it's disassemble one, go back, assemble another, disassemble the next, go back, assemble the other.
Oh. Well, you are just the right person to manage a project like this.
It's working out well. It works with my brain.
Good. All right. Well, today's question comes from someone with the username Cozy Little Craps. Let me try that again. Craftsman. It's the Craftsman. This is going to be fun. Today's question comes from someone with the username Cozy Little Craftsman on Instagram. Gosh, that was harder to say than it needed to be. And her question is, any tips on using IKEA cabinets or other low-cost cabinets to create a kitchen that feels period appropriate? And she is apparently living in a 1920s Craftsman with a gutted kitchen.
Okay. This is a lot of fun. This question's a lot of fun because it's all about adapting what you have at your disposal to make it work in an older house. And I think that's a dilemma that a lot of people run into, because getting completely custom cabinets or completely custom milled molding or trim or anything like that is always a challenge for us. So this, I think, as I'm approaching our kitchen renovation in the next few months, I was considering all of our options several months ago in terms of cabinets, and this was one of those options. So I have a few ideas on how to do this pretty effectively.
Well, and you mentioned it's hard to get custom cabinets, but it's also really hard to pay for them, because I could easily spend $100,000, even $200,000 on a kitchen that is perfection for my house. But like many people, we don't have that. And in 2016, we did kind of a low to mid-range kitchen remodel with cabinets from a big box store, not IKEA, but we did use a lower cost version. So go ahead.
I think that's something really important to say here, is a lot of people think it's IKEA or something else. And that's not it at all. When we're talking about IKEA, we're talking about flat packed, ready to assemble. So those are cabinets that are made based off of some specifications, and then you are putting them together in their basic structure. And then what can you do to sort of augment those cabinets to make them work better for your house? So when we're talking about IKEA or generically ready to assemble, there are several options. I know for our kitchen, we're going to be looking at a custom made ready to assemble to save costs there. So we'll be assembling them and then putting them up into our kitchen. When you're looking at something more like IKEA, you're working with the IKEA specifications on the sizes of the cabinets. So it's not something that's going to be totally custom, but it's still coming to your house, flat packed, ready to assemble. You put them together. So you're putting the boxes together and then starting to put them in place. When you're thinking about IKEA cabinets, or any cabinets really, you're thinking about 2 major components on a cabinet. You're thinking about the cabinet boxes, and you're thinking about the cabinet fronts, the doors, and how they're all, what it will look like when you have them all installed. So I'd say first, let's talk about the doors and the cabinet faces and the fronts, because I think that's going to be the thing that really drives how do you adapt these ready to assemble pre-made cabinets to work in an older house. One of the things I would say is, if you're thinking about cabinet colors and not using natural wood, start with wood cabinet doors. Don't go the MDF route where everything is kind of cut out. It looks a little bit plasticky and a lot of times doesn't work well in an older house. So choose from their wood profiles, their actual wood cabinets or cabinet doors, and plan to paint those. And I don't mean paint them necessarily by hand sitting in your garage or anything like that. You can take them to a paint place that will take your door fronts and they'll spray them in their booth and bake them so that you get a good high quality finish off of it. But you're starting with those solid wood cabinet fronts, doors, faces, everything like that.
Can I interrupt you for a sec?
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I have the factory finished cabinets fronts and they look okay. So I agree with you. They don't look quite right. It's the side panels, I think, that just look really bad overall,
Yes.
if I had to choose. So the cabinet doors themselves, they could fake somebody out. But those thin, 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch side panels that cover up the sides of the cabinets, those do not look real.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And that's kind of the next with the boxes. That's sort of what you approach. You're going to be dealing with particle board if it's coming from IKEA. A lot of people call it beaver puke. It's chipped up.
Why?
It's chipped up wood, all pressed and glued together. Oh, sorry, you're going to hear a siren here in the background.
Okay, let's hold on just a second. We're just getting a run for our money. Alex and I are using a new interface today, and I'm struggling a little bit with getting it to work. And so we're gonna try everything today.
And I live in Old Town Alexandria, where there's a firehouse right down the street from us. So whenever they're going to a call, we always get to hear them when they're going by.
All right. Well, it adds a little cottage feel to the show, doesn't it?
Yes.
All right. Where were you?
So beaver puke. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Back on beaver puke.
Yeah. People call it beaver puke because it's essentially wood chips, sawdust, glue, all pressed together into a board. And that's why it gets a bad reputation, especially around water and moisture, because it sucks water up and can be damaged easily. And then they cover it with a veneer. You've got this compressed, glued together side panels, and then they put some sort of a veneer over it, usually a vinyl or something like that gives it a solid look. But that's where, kind of from your experience, the side panels never quite look right, because they look like you've sort of assembled this thing that doesn't really belong, and it doesn't work when you expect a panel where you've got, a raised or a sunken panel next to a main walkway, for example, in a kitchen.
Right. I agree.
So the way around that, and that's, I think, the root of this question here is how do you take these cabinets and adapt them to make them look really good in an old house? And it's very easy to do if you plan ahead a little bit. Most of it has to do with assembling the boxes, assembling the cabinet fronts, getting the boxes hung in place so that they look the way that you want them to look in your kitchen. And then you start augmenting them with additional applied pieces of wood, essentially just different levels to make it look like it has a panel. You can get a lot of craft project wood from the big box stores that are cut down into 1/4 inch thicknesses. You can use poplar is what I like to use. If poplar is not available, any clear pine will really work well. The whole idea here is to apply things with glue and brad nails that are paint stable and will give you the look that you want it to have for your kitchen. Once you do that, you start to build up all of your cabinet boxes, your cabinet fronts, adding some additional detail like crown molding to them to bridge a gap between the top of the cabinets and the ceiling, for example. Once you start to do that and you're applying these things onto it, then it's a matter of wood filling and painting it all the color of your cabinets to give that consistent look. And all of a sudden, you've gone from IKEA flat pack ready to assemble cabinets to something that looks completely custom and high end.
Absolutely. And I fully intend to pull off all of my side panels and replace them with wood instead, because I think it'll just look so much better.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that I didn't really realize the importance of it until I started planning out our kitchen and looking at a lot of other kitchens for inspiration and seeing common theme to it. If you look around at craftsman style kitchens, you'll be able to pretty quickly see what works and what doesn't work.
Now, a couple things I don't think we mentioned yet, are that you can use the IKEA boxes and you can buy different doors from several companies that, maybe you said that in the beginning, but there's a variety of companies that make semi-custom doors that will fit existing IKEA boxes. So you don't have to go straight up with what you find on the shelf at IKEA.
Yes, and even will fit IKEA hardware. People like, and by hardware, I mean hinges, soft close, all of that. They're very affordable. They tend to be pretty good quality. There's a standard pattern for applying them that work with those other companies' doors. So it's easy to kind of change them out. One other major thing here to consider is you can also do kind of the ultimate and high-end look in cabinet design for kitchens and really any cabinets is the full inlay doors that are set against a bead or something like that. You can fake that it depends on how much you want to get into it, because there's a lot of customization that needs to happen. But you can fake that with IKEA cabinets by applying a face frame onto the front of full overlay doors to fill up that gap between the doors. And then you have when the door is shut, the door is shut as a full inlay. There is a lot of finicky detail work that you have to do, because tolerances in inlay doors versus overlay, you have to have a consistent 16th inch reveal around the door. And those tolerances are not usually there if it's meant to be a full overlay door. So you'll have to do a lot of kind of cutting and scribing and shimming and everything to get it to look right. It all depends on how much effort you want to put into it. This is something crazy that I would definitely do if I were doing this process, because I don't mind all the extra effort. But I know a lot of other people might get pretty frustrated with that and instead would go with the full overlay, which works fine just as well.
Right. Okay, so we only have about a minute and a half left. So let's quickly touch on hardware. And when I say hardware, I mean handles, drawer pulls, latches, that kind of thing, not to be confused with hinges. But that can make or break your kitchen design as well. One of the things that we did here is that I did have one bank of original cabinets in our pantry. And so I got some replica hardware for our kitchen that blended in really nicely with the hardware that I knew was original to this house. Also, we have Eastlake doorknobs and window pulls all over the house. So that's where I went with the style. Everything's Eastlake here.
Yeah, that's a good point, that you have so many options when it comes to hardware that you see, different reproduction. You can even get salvage hardware if you're looking around on eBay and you get lucky with a matching salvage hardware. That really goes a long way. And I would say the one thing to kind of finish it out with IKEA cabinets, there tends to be a pretty large toe kick that's just a box. That's another thing you can do, is apply a baseboard below the cabinets to kind of cover up or give you a different look on that toe kick area. That starts to make your cabinets look more like furniture rather than cabinets hanging on a wall. That tends to do well in an old house. And then the one other thing I would say is adding wood on the side panels that connects the upper cabinets to the countertop to make it look more like a hutch rather than floating cabinets on the wall. That goes a long way in an old house, making it, again, look like furniture, look like something was placed, looking more like a fitted kitchen than a bunch of cabinets that have been affixed to the wall.
Right. That would be a beautiful detail. Thank you for that. I wish we had more time, but we don't.
But this was fun anyhow.
It was. Thank you for always bringing such good ideas. And I'm really glad that you're going to be a part of several episodes this season.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. And to Cozy Little Craftsman, I hope Alex and I gave you some information so that you'll be able to move forward with your kitchen project when you are ready. And if anyone else has an old house or DIY question that you would like for me and a guest to answer on an upcoming episode, please send me a direct message on Facebook or Instagram, or visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com and submit your question via the contact form. Thanks again, Alex.
Absolutely.
And now it's my turn to ask you a question. This season, I want to know, regarding old house ownership, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? Here are a couple of your answers from Instagram. Carrie says, I wish we'd known we should have refinished the floors before we moved in. Gosh, Carrie, I am with you. We moved everything on the first floor to refinish the hardwood, but I am completely overwhelmed by the thought of doing that upstairs. I guess we'll both know better next time. And Stephanie offers this advice. Save and invest more. Most things I spent money on weren't worth it in the long run. Stephanie doesn't elaborate on what she spent money on that wasn't worth it, but it is sound advice. It's always wise to pause before opening your wallet, especially when projects are plentiful and money is tight. If you have an answer to this season's question and you'd like to leave a voicemail, head on over to truetalesfromoldhouses.com and click on the mic icon on the bottom right corner of the page. Follow the prompts from there. You may use your phone or computer as long as it has a mic. You're also welcome to submit your answer on the contact page or send me a message through social media. And once again, this season's question is, regarding old house ownership, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? Let me know. I want to pause here to say that True Tales from Old Houses continues this season because of the generous support from our sponsors. Once again, we are supported by the Window Course from Scott Seidler of the Craftsman blog. The Window Course is a step-by-step do-it-yourself window restoration program that will teach you everything you need to know to successfully restore your wood windows. The Window Course offers all of the start-to-finish video instruction you need right now. Scott is one of the best teachers in the business, and I have learned so much from him over the years. One of the best things about buying the Window Course is that it's yours to keep. You own it. You don't have to dig through YouTube or your computer bookmarks trying to find the right tutorial. Just go directly to the Window Course, and it's like having Scott at your house whenever you need him. The content is self-paced, so you can go as fast or as slow as you need to, and there are several price points to fit your needs and budget. If you sign up for the Lifetime Access Package or the Training Package, then you'll get a free infrared paint remover, which is a $130 value. And even better, the Window Course is offered with a money-back guarantee, and I've still got an active coupon code to share. Scott is offering True Tales from Old Houses listeners a special discount. For 10% off, visit thewindowcourse.com and use the coupon code TrueTales. True Tales from Old Houses is also supported by Sutherland Wells, maker of exceptional polymerized tung oil finishes since 1965. All of the Sutherland Wells products are handcrafted in Providence, Rhode Island, with the highest quality, sustainably grown tung oil. Tung oil, native to China, has been used for centuries as a durable finish for wood, metal, and stone. And unlike polyurethane, tung oil finish penetrates the surface of the wood so it flexes and contracts as conditions change, making it the perfect pre-finish or protectant for everything from fine furniture to window sash and sills. And I've started adding Sutherland Wells products to my oil primer for that added flexibility and penetration, most recently on a window jamb as part of the bathroom remodel. And I am so pleased by how smooth the top coat of paint looks now. There really is a striking difference using the combination of tung oil and primer versus primer alone. Specifically for pre-coat, I used Clarabelle's, but Sutherland Wells has an entire product line for whatever you're working on right now. Siding, hardwood floors, furniture restoration, cutting boards, you name it. To learn more about the complete product line, visit Sutherland Wells, that's Wells, sutherlandwells.com. And to save 10% on your first order, use the coupon code TrueTales. True Tales from Old Houses is also supported by Preservan, a unique preservation franchise opportunity developed by longtime window restoration pro Ty McBride. The mission of Preservan is to save the future by preserving the past. So what exactly is Preservan? Well, what if you could go to work every day on your own terms while also doing something meaningful within your community? What if you could start a home service business without owning complicated and expensive tools that are difficult to transport to and from job sites? The team at Preservan will train and support you to operate a Preservan business in your community, equipping you with the tools you need to perform sustainable wood rut repairs and build your own team of epoxy techs. You'll receive the playbook for a proven preservation business, exclusive access to ever-resin epoxy products, business software, and all the marketing, advertising, training, and technical support you need. Owning a Preservan franchise offers the perfect opportunity for work-life balance while serving your neighbors and community in a recession-proof industry. You'll get to work your own hours and spend the rest of your time in ways that are important to you. To learn more about becoming part of the Preservan family and their mission, go to Preservan, Preservan, preservanfranchise.com/truetales. My guest today is Stephen Ortado. For over 30 years, Stephen has worked on everything from wooden boats to historic mansions. Along the way, he has experienced many encounters with what he calls spirits. Now, here's the warning. Take a second to cover little ears if you have any concerns. There is a quick mention of death by suicide, totally unconfirmed, I might add, and one mild swear word in this segment. We usually keep it G-rated around here, so I wanted to give you a heads up before you listen.
Hi, my name is Stephen Ortado. I am in Washington, D.C. I do historic preservation work in and around D.C. and all over, basically.
Welcome, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying this already.
Oh, good. I'm so happy to hear that. You know, I just realized I called you Steve and you're Stephen, or did I mess it all up?
Steve is fine. Steve is fine.
Okay. Look at me. I've known you for 20 seconds and I'm already calling you by a name that probably your friends call you.
You have your choice, yeah. Either one.
All right. Thanks. Every October, we like to tell lighthearted ghost stories here on True Tales from Old Houses. And that's why you are here today. You've got some fun stuff to tell us. You've had over 35 years of experience in preservation and restoration. So you spent countless hours in places with history, good and bad, I'm sure. I would imagine that if ghostly encounters are real, you've been in the right place at the right time more often than not. So I guess the best place to start is at the beginning. So go ahead. Tell me what it was like for you in the beginning.
Okay, thank you. First, I wanted to say that I really love your show, and I appreciate very much your dedication to preservation. And I see that you practice what you preach. I could see that.
That's so nice. Thank you so much.
Well, it's the truth. So anyway, but I started to have, I've always felt like I had guardian angels around me for some reason or another. I always kept out of trouble. Something would happen and I'd narrowly avoid a disaster. One of my earliest exposures was when I was 4 years old. I was down in I lived in Brooklyn. I was down in the basement with my mother. She was doing the laundry. We had a washer. We'd take it out and bring it upstairs and hang it on a line. And while she's working on pulling them out, I'm staring into the furnace that was in the basement. And I started to talk to my grandfather, who was the fire in the furnace window. And so I was talking, and my mother said, Stephen, who are you talking to? And I said, I'm talking to Granddad. And she said, really? What is he saying? And I said, he says we have to get out. And she said, why? I said, because he said the furnace is going to blow up. And so she, did the face like, oh my God. She grabbed me and pulled me out of the doorway just as it exploded and blew basically asbestos all over us.
Oh my goodness.
The jacket.
Yeah.
And so we got out the door. And so after that, I just thought, no, that was whatever that was. I was only 4. And those kind of experiences started to kind of happen more often, and I didn't pay attention to them any longer. It was just a natural thing for me. So that was one of my earliest experiences. Pretty dramatic.
Yeah, I would say so. I just want to interject with just a couple things. First of all, when you said the asbestos jacket, those old pipes, ductwork were wrapped in what looks like paper to the naked eye, but that's asbestos wrap. So that's what you were talking about. But there are 2 things that come to mind here because I'm a mom and I have kids. First of all, you were 4. That's pretty early to have a memory. Something like, although that's striking, that would definitely make an impact. Or, oh gosh, that was a bad pun, wasn't it? But that was a terrible pun. Accidental, no, completely accidental. But the other thing is that your mom believed you. And I think that's pretty impressive because sometimes we get a little sidetracked and we're thinking about our own things like laundry in the basement. And if my 4-year-old said, the furnace is going to blow up, I'd like to think that I would say, wow, we need to get out of here. But I don't know.
Well, it was a good thing she reacted quickly enough. But she did die of mesothelioma. She did. Yeah. But that was from other exposure. Yeah. I mean, most people in Brooklyn, that's something to know, have a lot of asbestos in their houses.
Right.
That's it's kind of a pretty high incidence of people with mesothelioma come from Brooklyn.
Interesting. I had no idea. I'm really sorry about that.
The other thing that was kind of always something that I just did, I would always find 4-leaf clovers, just find them. I'd be walking along and I'd see it in the field. I'd be looking down and And I'd collect them and I'd bring them home actually to my mother, and she'd put it in her little Bible.
Oh, really?
And yeah, by the time she had like 30 of these, she didn't want any more. It's like, I don't have any room for the 4-leaf clovers. I said, okay. So I stopped collecting them and I just started to give them to people that I saw when I found one. They'd always, same reaction. Oh my God, I never had one in my life. I said, well, here.
Yeah.
Someone told me that you just can picture some abnormality in this field. And I said, probably that's what it is. That's kind of what I do.
Right. Yeah. Really strong visual perceptual skills. It sounds like. Wow, that's impressive. I found maybe 2, and I grew up in nature. I grew up in a national park with plenty of opportunities to find 4-leaf clovers. And I think I found 2, maybe 3 in my whole life. So you clearly have a gift.
Well, I always said this, that you don't find 4-leaf clovers. 4-leaf clovers find you. And that's the truth. I found that to be true. We were up in Shenandoah. We rented a cabin with 2 kids. We were out, and I said, let's go find some 4-leaf clovers. I think there's a lot around here. So we walked around the cabin and a little bit around the grounds, and we found 5 4-leaf clovers.
Wow. And you just knew they'd be there.
I had a feeling that they'd be there, yeah.
Yeah. So how many in your lifetime do you think you found?
A couple of thousand, I guess. It's been a long lifetime. I'm 69 years old. That's a lot of looking.
Right. This is an audio podcast, so nobody saw my face, but like,
astonished, right?
Yeah, that was my astonished face that you could not hear across audio. But yeah, wow, that's amazing. So do you still have a collection of them or anything?
Yeah. I have a few that I actually leave them in a lot of historic houses too. I whenever I'm into a place, I have to put something back. I usually sign it and put a clover there, but I sign it with my dog's name. I had a Yorkie, and his name is Ziggy. And I always put Ziggy, and I would keep thinking, in 100 years, somebody's going to look at this and, who the heck is Ziggy with all these clovers, right?
Oh, that's funny. All right. So past childhood then. Now, you've been working in historic buildings for a really long time. Do you have any particular stories you want to share about things that have happened to you in those places?
I'd like to talk about some of the just more interesting ones. There's little things that happen in a lot of places, but the most dramatic one was in Gunston Hall, which was the home of George Mason. It was built in 1755. He wrote the Bill of Rights in this house. That's what it's famous for mostly. He wrote the Bill of Rights. George Mason did not sign the Declaration of Independence because it did not, ban slavery, but he was a very important part of the Declaration of Independence. Anyway, I was there working on restoring the second floor and the lower floor parlor. And the place was built by a man named William Buckland, who was he was a fine sculptor, craftsman. They didn't have architects, but he just designed and built this building. Very ornate, corbels everywhere, a lot of carving, beautiful house. So I was there to investigate where certain doorways would swing, whether they were changed or not over the years. We were looking for square holes that the hinges would have been nailed into the jambs. There were no screws. So I had to take off a lot of the casings. And in the process, the architect wanted me to look for signs of a certain wallpaper, a specific wallpaper. I'll explain how I met this person first, and then I'll explain how he came back. So every morning I go down to Gunston Hall, which is about an hour from where I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And I would take 2 heavy bags of tools down a long walkway made out of oyster shells, crushed oyster shells, and made a big crunch, crunch, crunch noise as you're walking. I was, lazy. I wanted to do one trip. So I carried 2 heavy bags. So halfway down one of the mornings, I stopped halfway, I put down the bags, and I arched my back. I said, oh man, this is killing me, just the tools.
Right.
And this guy comes up in a period costume, like he's an enslaved person, with a small barrel on his shoulder. And he comes up and he says, oh man, it ain't nothing. So I said, yeah, you're right. And I bent down, picked up my bags, and then he wasn't there.
What?
So I said, okay, that was not a period reenactor. That was an enslaved person who was telling me not to be such a baby. So I walked on and went to work and didn't think anything of it. I said, well, that kind of happens, every once in a while.
I got goosebumps there. That's wild.
I didn't. It was just like, yeah, I expect to see something like that, right?
Sure.
Anyway, that evening, later on that evening, I usually work from 7 in the morning to 7 at night because it was a long trip back and forth, the commute. And I was going to close up and go home. And I heard a voice in my ear, the same person saying, if you look at the hatch combing in the attic and take off the casing, you'll find the wallpaper. And I turned to say thanks. And of course, there was nobody there. So I said, okay, I put a ladder up, took off the piece. And sure enough, here was this wallpaper that was basically was wanted because it was a hand-blocked British wallpaper. And it was in the house manifest that there was a special wallpaper that came from England. So I said, okay, thanks. Thanks again. I put the casing back and the combing back. The next day when I came in, I said to the curator that I found the wallpaper. And they said, really? How did you find the wallpaper? I said, you probably aren't going to believe it, but I met this person who showed it to me. And they said, and I said it was some enslaved person, a spirit.
Right.
And they said, oh, that's Samson. A lot of people have spoken and seen Samson in the house. He was the house slave.
Right.
At the time.
Huh.
Nobody was surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you think it was going to be a hard sell to try to convince them that someone, a spirit or a ghost, had shown you the wallpaper?
I did.
So, and they had been looking for this wallpaper, I guess, for quite some time.
Yep. They knew it was there, but they couldn't find any of it.
Interesting.
We found the piece. Yeah. That was one sighting, or two, if you want to count a hearing.
Did you ever have other experiences with Samson while you were there?
No, but there was something funny that happened. I was working at the time for a contractor, a general contractor. We were going to recreate a doorway going down into what was a bedroom on the first floor. It was closed off and walled off. So my boss got into a period costume, and he was posing for the artist to draw it. And for some reason, something told the artist that he didn't like the guy's hand. And he wanted me to put my hand around the whole, he was holding onto a pole.
Right.
So he said, why? He said, I don't know. They don't like it. And so they used my hand on this guy's body because his hand was too small. I think that was Samson. I said, no, that's too small for me.
Right. Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah.
So you can add hand model also to your resume.
Only if you want a meaty paw. Yeah. That's it.
Certain circumstances call for a meaty paw.
Right. Comes in handy.
Yeah.
Comes in handy. There's your pun.
Oh, that's good. We're just full of them today. Gosh, we should just keep going. We'll come up with more puns.
Before we finish, I'd like to tell you the best pun of my lifetime, and I'll tell you that later if you want.
Okay. Oh, yeah. We can talk about it after, but I'm looking forward to hearing that.
So if you want to go in a chronological order, we should do the stone house next, the old stone house.
Sounds good.
This is the oldest house in DC, and it has a very interesting story. I want to get the dates right. 1765. That's when it was built by Christopher and Rachel Lehman. Christopher Lehman was a craftsman, a carpenter, and he built this house and died a year after they moved in. And the interesting story about this is that it would have been demolished back in the 60s, the house, except for the fact that there was a misunderstanding about who actually lived there or was there. There was a tavern called Sutter's Tavern, and a certain John Sutter ran the tavern. And this is where George Washington and Lafayette met, and I'm sorry, Pierre L'Enfant met to lay out Washington. And it happened in the tavern. The person who eventually rented a room from the widow, Rachel Lehman, was John Sutter Jr. And they thought that he was the one that ran the tavern and that George Washington had been in this building. That's the only thing that saved the building, that they thought Washington was there.
Oh, I see. Otherwise, they were going to say, this is not historic. Let it go.
Yeah, they were redoing M Street, just wiping out everything on M Street, and it stayed there. Now, the story of the spirits that were there, I was working there we restored the whole place, the interior, the roof, the dormers, all that was going on. And I was working out on one of the dormers. I set up a platform outside the window, and I left my tools on the inside of a little bench I put there, so I could just reach in and grab the tools as I went. I reached in for one, and it was missing. I just put it down, and then it was missing. So I had to take off my harness and get back inside. And I said to the guy who was working on the opposite side of the building, did you take my chisel? And he said, no, I haven't been inside. I said, I just put it down. He said, didn't take it. I said, okay, I'll finish with something else. So then I hear a great commotion, and I go downstairs, and one of the site superintendents ran out of the house screaming because he was taking off a panel of a ceiling that was covering an air conditioning duct. And he said that he just put down a board and it threw itself across the hall to the front door and smashed it. He said he physically saw this board get up and he wouldn't go back upstairs. He just would not go back upstairs.
Oh my gosh, that's scary. Well,
mischievous.
Yeah, mischievous. We don't really tell scary stories here, but I think I've been programmed to think that all ghost stories, spirit stories, just like when you're a little kid, that must be scary. But you're right. It's completely mischievous, not scary.
There's a reason for all of this stuff, I'm sure. Anyway, I went down outside and there were some masons that were outside working on the chimney. And I said, what's going on? They said, he said he saw this plank go and he's not going back inside. I said, don't be ridiculous. It's just, just a little poltergeist. What's the big deal? And they asked me, said, well, who are the two women that were up there in the window? And I said, oh, I think I have an idea who the two women were in the window. Everyone had thought that this place has been haunted for a long time. But they gave this person a name. They just called him George. That was who was supposed to be the spirit. But then I thought the history of the house, and this is where the intrigue comes in. The original widow, Rachel Lehman, she sold the house to another widow named Cassandra Chu. And Chu is a Washington name. There are other people there who are the Chu, the Washington Chus. But I believe that it was Rachel and Cassandra that were there. Those are the spirits.
Right. Two women upstairs. That's wild.
In the window. Yeah, I didn't see them. I went right to the house. I did not see them, but they were there for the masons working right outside the window. They didn't bother us in any way. They just, the jig was up. Anyway, my tool was returned. By the time I got back upstairs, I said, yep, that's what they did.
That's what I was going to ask you, if they returned your tool. So good news. Good news. That's really funny. But you called them out and no more trouble after that.
Yeah. And that will lead us to the third ghost at Blair House, if we want to do that one now.
And that's a good setup because most of us, when we hear Blair House, automatically think of the Blair Witch Project, which is a creepy October horror movie. So here we go. Fits right in. But I'm sure it's a different Blair.
This is far less, movie worthy. It's actually, the Blair House is actually two buildings. It's the Blair Lee Mansion. In 1824, it was built, the Blair House. Francis Preston Blair built it. That was the era. And the house is famous for the Lee side, which Robert E. Lee and Lincoln had met there. It was Lee's cousin that actually built the house, but they met there as a neutral zone, where Robert E. Lee was offered the being in charge of the Army of the Potomac, but he declined it. Robert E. Lee was probably the only general in the world that was ever offered the same job for either side. And he chose Virginia, and there goes the Civil War. So this is one of those other historic sites that has so much importance and significance. It's also the site of, if you remember, the Truman assassination attempt in 1950, where I think there were three people rushed the place, and the guard at the gate was killed, but he killed one of the assassins, and then they eventually caught the other two. But there was Truman looking out the window of the Blair House at the guys that are attempting to kill him. Basically told him, get your head back inside the window. It was out.
Right.
It's quite a prominent building. It's right on across the street from the White House in that Washington campus there. And so we were working on the Blair House side, installing blast protection glass. This is after the first Iraq war. They were starting to fortify the building. We had to stay in the courtyard because of a chain of custody issue. Couldn't put microphones in the windows or anything like that. I was set up in the courtyard, and I sent the windows up to my guys to install them. When one came down, and he said, one of the windows fell off of the cart and broke all 6 panes. I said, that's impossible. You have blast protection glass on there. How could they break if it just fell off the cart?
Right.
He said, I don't know, it broke. So I said, all right, go ahead and do some more, and sent it back up about 2 hours later. And he said, I'll go up with you and I'll put it in. So while we're putting the window in, the top window, the second window just flew off of the cart onto the floor and broke all 6 panes again, second window. So I said, oh, that wasn't a gust of wind that happened that you thought you may have blown off. Either somebody died in this room or they committed suicide jumping out the window, but it's only 2 stories up, so it can't be that one. Mm-hmm. So I said out loud to this person, I said, look, we're just trying to fix your house. I've got plenty of glass, plenty of film. We're going to keep doing it until we finish, and then we'll get right out of your house. And then it stopped. We finished the job. No more. We did about 20 windows on that floor, and never a problem again. So I reported it down to the curator, and she said, oh, that's probably the ghost that we all know as Gist Blair. He was the last remaining Blair that lived there just before they gave it to the State Department, I think in 1940s, 1949, something like that. His adopted daughter did a biography about him and said he always liked to get up behind people and scare them in the house. And that's another place where they do have more ghost sightings of all different types. They say that even Harry Truman walks around in there, but I never met anybody other than Gist.
I love that when you go to a house museum or something, or any kind of museum like that, and you've explained your experience, and and you went down to tell someone about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we already know that happens." I always think that's so funny. They've been there so long, they already know what's going on,
and they have experienced it as well. And they it's kind of like this closed community. They don't want to say too much to too many people till they know their audience, right?
Sure.
It's like, if I tell this, they'll think, and I used to say, am I hallucinating or did this really happen? And they, no, I can understand what you're talking about, because things similar to that have happened to me in this house.
I had an experience at the Maystringer House Museum in Florida, which I've told that story on this podcast before, so I'm not going to tell it again. But it was the first major experience I'd ever had. And up till that point, I kind of thought the whole thing was baloney. And ever since then, a few little things here and there.
Yep. I mean, I think the whole concept of being open to whatever it is, whether it's, a warning or just somebody wanting to make contact, that's what makes it happen. But the skeptics just always be skeptics. But it just seems like it happens way too often to be just me hallucinating.
Sure. Or other people who are corroborating your story, they're not hallucinating at the same time as you are. Exactly. But so before we end today, I do want to ask you, and you kind of talked a little bit about it, but I always like to ask when I talk to people who have had these experiences, do you think there's something special about you or some specific reason that ghosts or spirits or energy are drawn to you?
No, I think just being open. I'm pretty low key. I've never really been afraid of going and doing something. I had a boatyard for 10 years. And I'd go up a mast. It wasn't a big deal. Just never really thought about it. And work in a lot of really dicey situations. And I just have trust that things will be fine. You know what I mean? I'm not a worrier. But I think that could be guardian angels. People have been watching over me for a long time. And I think I do take risks within reason. Or else you'd never really, step out onto that roof if you didn't, take risks. But I think anybody's capable of it, but skeptical people probably are pushing that away. Not that that's a bad thing,
Right. Yeah. We don't all need to be hearing this and seeing this and experiencing the same thing.
Can I tell you my best pun of my life?
Sure. Let's go out on a punny note.
So I was called to look at a house in Potomac, Maryland, to one of these, McMansions, when they wanted me to give them a price to do some marbleized 2 fireplaces, a mantle and a hearth. So I brought samples and I talked to the owner and I gave him the price. He picked out 2 that he wanted. And I gave him a price of something like $2,300 for the 2 of them. And he said, well, how long will it take? I said, it depends on how many, when I think it's finished, then it's finished, but probably a week to 10 days. And he said, why should I pay you so much? And I said, well, you called me here, so I figured you couldn't do it. So that was something that you wanted. And that's what I charge. And he said, I was going to ask you to faux bois my staircase. I don't suppose you know what that means. And I said, well, I tell you what I do know. People who live in crass houses shouldn't faux stones. They said, what the hell does that mean? I said, it means I'm not going to be doing anything in this house. And I walked out the door.
That was a good one.
But I said, but I thank you for allowing me to make the best pun of my life. And I walked out.
You're not going to get another setup like that one ever again, are you?
Actually, we do a lot of puns in my work.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories today, Stephen. It was so nice to spend this time with you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're open to this sort of thing because maybe there's a reason why the spirits need to be mischievous or tell their side of things or just be present in your life.
Yeah, there's a lot of history that we explain along with it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to True Tales from Old Houses, and thank you to my guests, Alex Santantonio and Stephen Ortado. Remember that you can enter to win a signed copy of Restoring Your Historic House, the comprehensive guide for homeowners, from now through October 14th. The entry form and rules are available on the True Tales from Old Houses website. To continue the conversation, join me on Facebook and Instagram at True Tales from Old Houses and Blake Hill House. And to learn more about everything we discussed in today's episode, visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com. Until next time.